Hello, I'm Odin, and today I'm going to make another prop from the movie Thor Ragnarok, because it's probably my favorite Marvel movie. To start, I have printouts of the original production designs of the swords. Jake Hempston was the original artist, and he has posted them on his website. And there are dimensions listed so I know the full size, plus color notes. I used Photoshop to resize the image to full scale and printed it out on many sheets of paper. Just tape them together, cut it out, and I have a full-size pattern. I want to make the swords from foam, of course, but my swords are typically too thick, so I wanted to try cutting a core from styrene plastic. I cut the first one full size, then removed 7mm from all the edges so I could seal it in a foam wrap later. This is some really thin stuff, and I was hoping to glue 2 full layers together and then add some extra strips to stiffen the core. By the way, using a brush with PVC cement totally works for gluing sheets of plastic together, but the fumes are really bad, so if you need to do this, please wear a mask. PVC glue worked. It glued the thin styrene together. Now, it's still got some wiggle. I'm a little concerned that even with foam on the outside, it's not going to be completely stiff, but you know, I'm going to keep going. I sand the sides of the plastic to roughen up the surface so I can glue a layer of foam on either side. Then I cut out the right size of blade shape. Even with 2 more layers of glue and foam, this is just not going to work. The blades are the right thickness, but nowhere near sword-like. That's not going to work. I gave it a try and it didn't work. Now, the Evil Dead chainsaw blade, that did work, but it was thicker plastic. Starting over, I use a graphite golf club shaft for the core. These can be pretty cheap at thrift stores. I just cut off the head and then sand the cutoff part, because after a while, the sharp corners can cut through the foam. Now I cut out the sword shape from some 5mm craft foam, leaving a center channel to fit the club shaft. I use some double-sided strongback craft foam as a center, so I can bulk it up for the thicker parts of the golf club shaft. Because it's 2 pieces of 5mm foam, I was careful to offset the seams so it wouldn't be too weak at one point. I glued the main blade body onto the last of the craft foam roll. This will skin over the channel where the golf club is. And I sand the golf club shaft to remove the glossy finish. This will help the glue to stick better. Be careful sticking long pieces of foam together like this. It's really easy to pull on one piece and cause the blade to curl. Just go slow and be sure the foam is laying flat. To seal the round shaft into the square channel, I fill the void with hot glue and then press the shaft in place. Then I fill up the top with more hot glue, smoothing the top off as much as I can. Now, I've skipped this step before, and the thin foam shows where the hole was cut for the center core. Then I make a second blade exactly the same way. So I got my 2 swords made, or at least the blanks for the blades. What I need to do now is actually sharpen them. Now, I could just use a Dremel to do this, but it's going to take a little too long, and I'm afraid of not making it really smooth enough. So I'm going to use a small 1-inch belt sander that I picked up. Now, the plate for holding your project is really small on this sander, and it's not secure enough. So I clamp a piece of plywood behind the plate and then use double-sided tape to stick on a larger piece of smooth foam core. Now, this is actually the heavy-duty stuff. It's more like gator foam. Now I have a plate that is smooth and sits at a good angle to bevel the edges of both blades to make them look like they have a sharp edge. And this was a really easy way to do this, and I was able to keep a pretty consistent sanded angle on the foam. And after the sander was set up, I was able to sharpen both foam blades in about 20 minutes. So there's a couple areas where the sander grabbed and chewed up the top layer of foam. I'm not happy about it. I'm not going to stress about it. I'm going to go ahead and go with it because I need to put a bunch of panel lines on these swords. So we'll do that now. Each sword has a different set of panel lines on the blade. I poke through the paper on the full-size pattern first, and then I can just connect the dots with a silver Bic marker. This silver pen has worked better for me than the silver Sharpies. It seems like the EVA foam just ruins the silver Sharpies in a hurry. For the other blade, I can see a pattern in a different picture, so I copy it onto the blade as best I can by just looking at it. To make the panel lines, I want to use a wood burner. Now, I can change the tips on mine, so I use a wider flat iron first. And this time, I'm definitely wearing a mask. I'd be breathing that smoke the whole time if I didn't. I try freehand at first, but using a metal straight edge is the right way to do this. The straight lines really look good. And I'm surprised at how quickly the panel lines are added to the blades. It was just about 20 minutes again to get both blades done. The crossguard is really small on these swords. It's just a couple of strips of 10mm Strongback craft foam, and that'll do it. Any 10mm foam would work. Strongback is self-adhesive, so it's easy to use. I measure the full-size handle and cut the exposed golf club at 7.5 inches. And to widen the grip, I use some 1/2-inch strips of floor mat foam on either side of the golf club, and then cover it with some 3mm Strongback foam. Each grip is different. One style has rounded corners, and the other is like a flattened octagon, where the sides are just slopes. I'll use the wood burning tool again for the repeating pattern on each grip, and I bend a wire clothes hanger to the shape that I need so I can make the patterns. Each sword has its own pattern, and bending a wire hanger was pretty easy. I switched the tip of the wood burner for the smallest tip I had, and my soldering iron base worked well as a place to keep the hot iron. I add a couple of panel lines to the crossguards and trim the corners. The sword style B has a raised pattern on the grip, so I cut a bunch of tiny 2mm foam strips that'll fit in between the pattern that I burnt into the foam. All total, I think there's about 60 of these little pieces, but I do like the pattern that it makes for the grip. Both swords have a pommel, so I cut some layers of 10mm foam, stack 2 of them together, sand the edges smooth, and glue them to the base of each grip. I use a heat gun to seal the foam on the blades. Now, I don't always do this. I thought I would try it again this time. The danger with using a heat gun on foam is not just burning the surface, but any small cut in the foam will open up, making a bigger line. I still like to seal my EVA foam with Plastidip. It's a vinylized rubber coating that bonds to the foam and works like a really good primer, and it's a skin for the foam. Once the Plastidip dries, I spray the entire sword with a bright silver spray paint. The concept art says that the swords are all anodized aluminum colors, with a teal blade and yellow handles. Well, I lightly misted my silver blades with the metallic blue spray paint I had, and then I used gold for the grips. Now, these are not perfect colors, but these were the closest ones that I had, and I kind of like the speckled pattern on the blue of the blades. I wrap the grip and blade with paper and painter's tape so I can spray the crossguard metallic red. These Sicarian swords are pretty colorful. I have a little bit of black shoe polish left, so I add some water and then use it to trace out the panel lines on each blade. Now, I don't want to just rub the shoe polish all over the blade like I usually do, because it dulls the silver and makes a really good steel look, but that's not the look I'm going for with these blades. I also trace the panel lines on the crossguards with black. But I am interested in a full wash with the brown shoe polish on the gold grips, which works really well, and I like the color that I get from the wash. I wipe the excess off the high points of the grip. I want these areas to be as bright as they can be. Once the polish dries, the swords are done. Most of the materials I use for this project I picked up locally. Strongback craft foam is available on Amazon. My Sicarian swords from Thor Ragnarok. Now, in the movie, these swords kind of unfolded and elongated when Thor pulled them from his back. Marvel did that using CGI. Now, I don't make my swords using computer graphics. I make my swords using foam, because this is how Odin makes. I really want to thank my Patreon supporters who really help with keeping this channel going. You guys are rock stars. If you like this build or have ideas for another video, please leave a comment below. And if you make any of these projects, you can send me a picture. It's about the right thickness, but damn it.